a conversation with conflict resolution expert Susan Yates. That is your topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi, everyone. This is Mac Pearley, attorney, mediator, arbitrator. Welcome back to the LMIPodcast, where we talk about law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. And now I have my colleague from back in the day, just from 2 weeks ago, Susan Yates, back on the show to talk a little bit more about her work herself and some of the things that might be very interesting to mediators out there, to lawyers out there who deal with people in conflict, people in crisis. All right, Susan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's a pleasure to be here. And unlike our other time, we're actually inside, no big Chicago wind. It's great.
Yes. And so for people who might be new to Susan, Susan and I were just briefly together out in Chicago right before the annual ABA Tech Show was to occur. This is the 2025 edition. And so she was gracious enough to meet me out there and just talk a little bit in front of the city skyline about her beautiful city and about herself. And so I wanted to have her back to have a more thorough conversation about just her legacy. She's a pioneer in conflict resolution. She's been doing this kind of work since, I believe, 1983. Is that correct, Susan?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And so just wanted to, again, revisit with you. A lot of people follow you on social media. I'll share your LinkedIn, which is Susan Yates Mediator on LinkedIn. You can check her out. I understand you might have a website coming out soon, so people can check you out there. But LinkedIn is definitely the place
Yeah.
to follow you and stay connected. So briefly, though, can you reintroduce yourself? Just give us the short version before we kind of get into the questions.
Sure. So it's true. I've been a mediator since 1983 when I started with the Center for Conflict Resolution in Chicago. Later in the 80s, I was executive director there. And between then and now, I've had a variety of positions working with mostly with nonprofits and with conflict resolution.
Yes. And so you've kind of done it all. Trainer. You've
Dispute system
you
design.
traveled around the world, doing this. I believe the country that you were, was it Dubai? I forget which
Yeah,
country.
Slovenia.
So Slovenia. That's it. So yes, if you're doing mediator training around the world, like I hope to one day,
Mm-hmm.
then you're the person to speak to. Okay, so some questions.
Yep.
When I was out in Chicago, I was there for the purposes of legal tech, not just
Mhm.
legal tech, but also mediator technology. And so before most mediators started to think about online mediation, before the Zoom boom, we called it during COVID, and we were all
Mhm.
forced to go online and talk about how we can use technology to move things forward and to resolve conflicts and disputes. You were already seeing its promises. So can you tell us about your beginnings when it comes to technology and how you see it connected to access to justice, something I know that's very important to you?
Yes, exactly. Well, for 27 years, I was executive director at Resolution Systems Institute, and our mission is to improve access to justice by strengthening court ADR. And so I've worked for a very long time trying to figure out how to have people have better access to ADR for their sort of everyday problems, their debt cases, eviction cases, family cases, foreclosure, etc. And so when ODR came around, and when I think of ODR, I'm not just thinking about sort of a video version of what we do in mediation.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of promise for actual ODR platforms where people who are self represented can go and not only communicate with one another, but also access legal information, other kinds of resources that would be helpful to them in resolving their cases. So that's why when ODR first started, I was ready to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, and so I know the work that RSI had done. They connected, with other organizations who were also interested in access to justice and seeing how online technology might impact, the masses. So
Yep.
one of the projects that you guys worked on was with UC Davis, and it
Yeah.
was to evaluate how online dispute resolution worked in death and small claims cases in Collin County, and that's just of North Texas. I'm in South
Mhm.
Texas right now, so it caught my eye because it's local, to me. So can you just share some takeaways from the report that RSI and UC Davis ended up doing, and why that kind of work was important?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So, Pew Charitable Trusts had a whole effort for several years working. I think they're still working on civil litigation. And so it made a lot of sense that they wanted to figure out how is ODR working, and so they supported a project that RSI did with UC Davis, and we looked at a couple of different programs. One was the one in Collin, Texas, and Collin County, Texas. And what we found there was that even though it was a mandatory program,
Mhm.
people just weren't using it. And so, it's not true. We know this in standard mediation. Now we know it in ODR. It is not true that if you build it, they will come.
Yeah,
You have to put systems. I mean, that dispute system design isn't only about what happens once you're in the process, but it's about all the steps that have to happen in order to get you to that process. And so the findings from that actually led to a project that RSI is doing now called the Open Project, ODR Party Engagement, where they have created uh, websites, videos, notices in ways, and then tested those with people who are similar to those who would be self represented in court, and then improved them yet again to have these models available for courts everywhere to make use of so that they can communicate better with potential parties about ODR.
gotcha. So why is this kind of work about ODR so important to you?
Well, it really goes back to why is mediation important to me, and I studied labor relations at Cornell's ILR school, and that's when I first heard. We learned about mediation, arbitration,
Mhm.
negotiation in the labor management context, but I also heard about community mediation then, and it just I mean, sometimes something just clicks for you, and I thought this just makes so much sense. Have people sit down, work out what their issues are with one another, um, and rather than have them go in front of a judge who is not going to be able to spend the time to really hear what all the underlying needs and interests are, it just made sense to me to have mediation, which is what led me into community mediation, is what led me to court mediation, because community mediation programs often need to work with courts in order to get those cases into the mediation system. So it really comes from, it was a guest speaker when I was in college who came and just lit that fire that I've been passionate about this the rest of my career.
Gotcha. So next week, I'll be back in Chicago for the ABA Dispute Resolution Section's spring conference. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again and some
Yeah.
of your colleagues. So yeah, Chicago is becoming quite a popular place. I guess I was gonna ask this last, but I could ask you now: why Chicago? What is it about your city that has become such a mecca, so to speak, for all things legal technology, um, mediation, Is it because the ABA has an office there? Why is Chicago kind of the center for all of this?
Yeah, I think it's, with everything else, it's a matter of leadership, and Chicago has been very fortunate to benefit from the Center for Conflict Resolution, which has been in place since the late '70s. And it's a community mediation program, but it's much more than that. They do extensive training, and they do facilitations in the community, and so because of that really stable institution in the midst of the Chicago mediation community,
Mm.
a lot of the mediators here have sort of grown up at CCR. And so I think that's part of it. And then another part is that one of the woman who was the training director at CCR for quite a while, Allison Carroll, she really got the bug for technology in the law and in ADR. And for a while now, 10 years, I don't know, she has been at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. And that's been a great platform for really developing and hosting and bringing people together to look at legal tech and at ADR and tech. And
Gotcha.
there are certainly lots of others involved there. It's not just
Yeah.
Allison, but I think that she has been one of the leaders in this.
Yes, the Center for Conflict Resolution, Chicago. I believe that was where you had your starting, wasn't
It
it?
is. Yep, that's where I was trained. That's where I was executive director. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. So when I leave Chicago, I'll be on a plane to London, and that is going to be, speaking of ODR, let me share my screen.
Mhm.
That is going to be for ODR 2025, the 25th International Forum on Online Dispute Resolution, end of this month. And this is basically all things ODR, where we basically go as nerds and we just talk about the latest trends. Somebody recently asked me, wait a minute, what could you guys possibly be talking about for 2 days
Oh my
about
goodness. Yeah.
online mediation? Basically, that's a simple way of seeing it. However, there are a lot of big names who are going to be out there, futurists, people who dabble in this stuff. I shouldn't use dapple. I should say who make it their life's work
Leaders. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
bring conflict resolution to the masses, because the potential, of the internet taking the art of negotiation, conflict resolution, of conciliation out to millions of people. I mean, I'm telling you, that is the kind of thing that can break out world peace you
Yeah.
know and
Yeah.
and so in many ways, this is why I'm so passionate about this stuff, that folks don't realize just one of the consequences that came out from this Zoom boom, where all of a sudden all mediators went online
Yeah.
and now realize, wait a minute, we can spread peace and peacemaking to other countries, even, and where borders don't even you know
Yeah.
do not remain as a constant nightmare anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's revolutionary. And so, just what are your thoughts? Are you familiar with the National Center for Technology and Dispute Resolution?
Oh, for
That's
sure.
out of it. But yeah, tell me some words.
Well, I think one of the things that's been important to me in mediation and with ODR and with self represented litigants is what are the ethics that underlie it all. I was involved in uh, the sort of revision of the model standards of conduct back in the early to mid aughts.
Yeah.
And and I just have a fundamental belief, especially with people who don't have lawyers to represent their interests, that whoever the mediator is or the tech provider or what have you, that they have to operate within an ethical container so that they are, so they can exercise self determination and that sort of. So I think that like there are the iCoder standards that are out there,
Yep.
and I think all of that is really important to the field and to the field being sort of protecting the rights of people who don't have lawyers there to protect their rights.
Yes, and so for all that work that you've done, you've gotten a lot of recognition for it. And so I know you're familiar with, I'm going to mess this name up, but it's the Dellenberg Raven Award.
Uh-huh.
This is a ABA award that's given every year to somebody who has made a big impact in the field of conflict resolution. Um, and some big names of people have gotten this award, like Governor Bill Richardson. He passed away some years back. Janet Reno. I mean, we've had Friedman. The author, the one who wrote the Lexus and the Olive Tree. This is a book I had to read back in college years ago. So there are some big wigs who have gotten this prize, and you got it in 2024. And so,
Mhm.
what did that mean to you, and how did it impact you?
I was just stunned. As we were talking about ODR, actually, Colin Rule had received the award the year before,
Yeah.
and so to feel like I am somehow in that same universe of leaders in the field was just kind of overwhelming to me. And then I got to the actual award ceremony, and I stood up there, and I looked out at this ballroom of people applauding, and I thought, oh, this is love. These are my people. This is my community. Through all this work that I've done over the years, I have friends and colleagues around the country, around the world. So it was very meaningful on a personal basis as well as professionally.
Yeah. Well, it was a big deal because I didn't know you had gotten, that prize. And it reconfirmed something I had told you. And that was when I was, reviewing your profile and just reading up on you. I was like, "Oh, this is a kind of a big deal person. I should get to know her." And so yeah, awesome. So it was great for you to, then join me on the podcast and then meet me in Chicago. So I greatly appreciate it. But yeah, folks can learn more about that. And if you want to know how to pronounce it, it's D'Alembert Raven.
Yeah, Dallenberg.
D'Alembert.
This is at the beginning, Dallenberg.
You
Yeah,
see?
great.
Yeah, I'm a French person. I should know how to say this correctly.
I'm not sure that Dallenberg is the way that French people would say it.
Yeah, you know. All right. So let's talk about jams real quick. Let me stop my share. So jams is a big name in the
Yes.
world of conflict resolution, and they have a chapter in every big city. And so recently, you were chosen to be on the JAMS Pathways, a list of conflict resolution experts. So can you tell us first what is JAMS, so for people who don't know about it, what they do, and then what you're doing now and what it means for the kind of work that people who as a pathway recipient do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as you said, JAMS is a preeminent provider of neutral services, mediation, arbitration around the country, around the world. Um, and some years ago, they decided to create a program to address sort of the disputes kind of upstream before they became something that needed, that ended up with a legal case that needed mediation or arbitration, but rather to work with entities to help them address problems as they're sort of brewing and bubbling up. And so that's what JAMS Pathways does. And it's great fun because every project is different, because the needs of each entity are different. I worked with a National Park Service group recently, and the JAMS Pathways has worked with educational institutions, corporations, all kinds of different entities and institutions. So, one of the things that I really love about it is that every project is unique. It isn't like there's some cookie cutter where people say, "Oh, what do here? This is what we do all the time." There's a lot of kind of interviewing and collecting information and designing exactly the right response for whatever the given situation is.
Okay, so you're a facilitator and a trainer there,
Yep,
and so it's a pretty small club. It's not
yep,
a whole lot of folks.
yep.
So congratulations on that. And I saw
Thank
that
you.
announcement recently.
Yep. Yeah,
So
well, I left RSI last summer, And so that's when I joined Jam's Pathways and sort of hung out my shingle to do work, the kind of work I've been doing with um, nonprofit entities and conflict resolution. Sometimes one, sometimes the other, sometimes both.
Got it. Got it. All right. So let's wrap up. So thank you
Yeah.
so much, for coming on. If people want to follow you directly, what's the best way they can contact you? Is there a, I know you said there's not a website just yet, and LinkedIn
Yeah.
is the best way.
Yep. LinkedIn, or I'm happy to give my email address, which is Susan at SusanYatesLLC.com.
Yes. And we'll put that into the show notes. And so if people want to, connect with you, they can. All right, Susan Yates, thank you so much, for coming on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. It's always great to talk to you, Mac. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Take care. Bye bye.